Imagine a life where your boss, your father-in-law, was a sneaky, cheating miser. That was Jacob's life. For years, Laban, the richest man in the land, had promised Jacob a share of his flocks from marrying his daughters, Leah and Rachel. But instead of being fair, Laban tricked Jacob again and again, changing the rules every time, always to his own advantage. Jacob felt a wave of anger bubbling inside him. He'd worked tirelessly day and night, under the scorching sun and freezing stars, only to be cheated out of his hard-earned rewards. One day, while tending his sheep, Jacob overheard Laban's sons whispering. "Jacob has taken everything our father owns," they sneered. "He's grown rich off of our father's wealth." Jacob felt a chill of fear run down his spine. He knew Laban was growing suspicious. Then a miracle, God spoke to Jacob in a dream. "Go back to the land of your ancestors. I will be with you." Excitement surged through Jacob. He longed for freedom, for his own land, for a life where he could finally be his own boss. But leaving wasn't easy. He had to convince his wives, Leah and Rachel, to flee with him. They were understandably hesitant. "What about our inheritance?" Leah asked, her voice trembling. "Laban treats us like strangers," Rachel added, her eyes filled with sadness. Finally, they agreed. Jacob packed up his entire flock, his tents, and all his belongings. He felt a surge of anticipation as he prepared to leave. This was a daring escape, a risky gamble. But he trusted God. Rachel, however, had one last act of defiance. She secretly stole Laban's most prized possessions, his household gods. Jacob, unaware of her actions, felt a pang of shame when he realized he had deceived Laban. The chase was on. Laban, furious, pursued Jacob relentlessly. For 7 days, they raced across the desert, the tension thick in the air. Jacob felt a wave of horror as he imagined Laban's wrath. Then a miracle intervened. God warned Laban in a dream not to harm Jacob. Laban, though still furious, was forced to restrain himself. The confrontation was tense. Laban accused Jacob of stealing his daughters and his gods. Jacob, his voice rising with anger, defended himself. "I worked for you for 20 years, he exclaimed. "You cheated me at every turn. I endured the scorching sun and the freezing nights. All for what?" Finally, after a long and heated argument, they made a peace treaty. They built a pile of stones as a symbol of their agreement, a promise to never harm each other. As Laban turned to leave, he kissed his daughters and grandchildren goodbye. A wave of love and sadness washed over them all. It was a bittersweet farewell. Jacob, finally free, continued his journey, his heart filled with gratitude and hope. He had faced many challenges, but with God's help, he had overcome them all. Jacob was terrified. He had wronged his brother, Esau, years ago, and now he was returning home. Esau, a fierce warrior, was likely seething with anger. Jacob imagined his brother, a towering figure with a face contorted in rage, leading a horde of angry men to attack him. To appease Esau, Jacob sent a massive herd of livestock as a gift. 200 goats, 200 sheep, 30 camels. It was an extravagant offering, meant to demonstrate his humility and fear of his brother's wrath. But even with these gifts, Jacob was still plagued by anxiety. He divided his camp in two, fearing a surprise attack. He prayed fervently to God, his voice trembling with fear. "Please, God, protect me and my family," he cried. That night, as Jacob prepared to cross the river, he felt a strange presence. A man appeared, strong and mysterious, and they wrestled fiercely. Jacob, though smaller, fought with all his might. The struggle was intense, a battle of wills. The man, sensing Jacob's determination, touched his hip, causing excruciating pain. Jacob, despite the agony, refused to give up. "I will not let you go unless you bless me," he cried. Finally, the man, impressed by Jacob's courage, blessed him and revealed his true identity, God himself. Jacob, overwhelmed with surprise and awe, realized he had wrestled with the divine. He named the place Peniel, meaning face of God, forever remembering the terrifying and awe-inspiring encounter. From that day on, Jacob limped, a constant reminder of his struggle with God. He also forbade his descendants from eating the tendon near the hip, a tradition that continues to this day. This encounter transformed Jacob. He was no longer just Jacob, the deceiver. He was now Israel, a man who had wrestled with God and prevailed. He emerged from this ordeal stronger, wiser, and deeply changed. Jacob's heart pounded like a drum. He could see him now, Esau, his brother, approaching with a fearsome band of 400 men. Years ago, Jacob had tricked Esau out of his birthright, and the memory filled him with shame and fear. He imagined Esau, his face contorted in anger, ready to unleash his fury. But to Jacob's surprise, Esau ran towards him, not in anger, but with open arms. They embraced, tears streaming down their faces. It was a moment of pure joy and relief. Esau, seeing Jacob's large entourage, asked about the many children and the vast herds of animals. Jacob, humbled, explained that these were blessings from God. Esau, generous of spirit, waved away Jacob's gifts. "Keep them for yourself," he said. Jacob, touched by Esau's kindness, insisted on giving him the gifts. "To see your face is like seeing the face of God," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Finally, the brothers parted ways. Jacob, relieved and overjoyed, continued his journey. He settled in Shechem, a place that felt peaceful and welcoming. He purchased a plot of land and built an altar, thanking God for his incredible journey. This reunion, filled with unexpected kindness and forgiveness, was a powerful reminder that even after years of hurt and betrayal, love and reconciliation could prevail. Dinah, Jacob's young daughter, was curious about the world outside her family's camp. She longed for adventure and decided to explore the nearby city of Shechem. Unfortunately, her curiosity led to disaster. Shechem, the ruler's son, saw her and was immediately captivated. He took advantage of her innocence and raped her. Dinah was heartbroken and terrified. When Jacob and his sons learned of the terrible deed, they were filled with rage. "This is an outrage," they roared. "How could he do such a thing to our sister?" Shechem, desperate to make amends, offered to marry Dinah. He even offered to pay a large dowry to Jacob. But the brothers were not easily appeased. They knew that simply marrying Dinah off wouldn't erase the shame and humiliation she had endured. They devised a cunning plan. They demanded that all the men of Shechem be circumcised. This, they claimed, was the only way to ensure their acceptance into the community. The men of Shechem, eager to welcome Jacob and his family, readily agreed. But the brothers had a sinister plan. 3 days later, while the men were still recovering from the painful procedure, Simeon and Levi, fueled by anger and a thirst for revenge, attacked the city. They slaughtered every male, including Shechem and his father. They looted the city, taking everything of value. The once vibrant city was transformed into a scene of horror and destruction. Jacob was horrified by his son's actions. "You have brought terrible shame upon me," he cried. "You have made us enemies of all the people in this land." Simeon and Levi, however, remained defiant. "He treated our sister like a worthless object," they argued. "He deserved to be punished." The tragic events in Shechem left a deep scar on Jacob and his family. It was a stark reminder of the consequences of violence and the importance of forgiveness. Jacob, finally free from Laban's deceit, yearned for a fresh start. God instructed him to return to Bethel, the place where he had first experienced God's presence. Before leaving, Jacob knew he needed to cleanse himself and his family of any reminders of their past. He instructed everyone to get rid of any idols or amulets they might have collected. He buried these symbols of the past under an oak tree, symbolizing a fresh beginning. As they traveled towards Bethel, a sense of peace and anticipation filled the air. Jacob felt closer to God than ever before. He built an altar at Bethel, a place of worship and remembrance, and God blessed him once more. But joy soon turned to sadness. Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife, struggled to give birth to their second son. Despite the midwife's encouragement, Rachel succumbed to the pain, leaving Jacob heartbroken. He named their son Benjamin, a name that meant son of my sorrow, a poignant reminder of his loss. Years passed. Jacob continued to grow his family, his sons becoming strong and capable men. He finally returned to his father, Isaac in Hebron. Isaac, a man of great age and wisdom, had lived a long and fulfilling life. But even the longest life must eventually come to an end. Isaac, surrounded by his loved ones, peacefully passed away. Jacob and Esau, despite their past conflicts, came together to mourn their father. It was a bittersweet moment, a reminder that even in the face of loss, family bonds could endure.